now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled Rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome and welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ben.
on Spoiled Rotten. And today we are spoiling the first season of Creature Commandos. All right, so this is officially the first thing in the DCU. This is
By
according
James
to James Gunn.
Yeah, James Gunn and Peter
in terms
Safran's
of-
DCU.
No, yeah, just in terms of the, like, don't think about, I know I see people, like, scratching their heads. Don't think about, like, the Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill of it all. That's done. Unless it is brought up, and we will go through it in this show, unless it's brought up from this point on, nothing is canon, is basically the idea.
I have a problem with that because clearly they're referencing things in the past, like Suicide Squad, the one that James Gunn did, and the events of that in this. So
And
it's
Peacemaker.
just like, and Peacemaker, and it's just like, it's real hard for me to have that separation because it's like you're gerrymandering what like
But it's what he's been
backstories we have
saying
to
for years.
take a look
I
at.
mean,
Yeah.
I can't knock him. He said, these are the things that are, like, somewhat canon, and then otherwise, unless I say, then, or unless it's, like, explicitly stated in a show, like in this show or movie, then the other stuff doesn't count. And I'm like, oh, he's sticking to his word.
He is. He absolutely is. And because the thing is, like, I can respect the fact that he's like, no, Suicide Squad 1, get out of here. We're not taking care of that. But the Suicide Squad that I did, yeah, we're putting that in here for sure. And I'm like, from character design to events to references to voice actors taking on reprising the roles, I'm like, all right, this is gonna get a little bit messy. We'll see. But it is the first official entry in the DCU officially. So that's
7
fun.
episodes.
Which is a weird number.
It is what it is. At least they got a second season.
Yeah.
We'll see how long that takes to get to us. But I think luckily for me and people listening to this podcast, I did rewatch this season because I think my first thing was like, all right. And I think the rewatch helped. What was holding me back, and I still think this, was it was too close to the James Gunn stuff I don't like, which felt more like shock value than soulful.
Okay.
Again, I really like the Suicide Squad, and I think people could ding that for being things just for shock value. But if you listen to our episode about that movie, I think that what the main thing they're getting at there, like being useful until people don't want you to be, is so well explored throughout all the different characters that some of the shock value stuff, I guess, doesn't bother me as much as this. And it also, maybe I would revisit and feel differently. It doesn't feel as, when I say dark, I just mean like there's a lot of stuff here, not just violence towards kids, but just a lot of stuff where I'm just like, oh, I guess that just has to happen because this is a sad story as opposed to helpful for me understanding what's going on. Like, I guess gratuitous is the best way to put it. Gratuitously dark the first time around versus the second time, where my feeling was this show was quite obviously in the era of gods and monsters, trying to explore what makes a monster and how do you get a monster. So yeah, that was my initial take on this season.
To me, my take on this was taking the parts of Suicide Squad 1 that kind of worked and kind of like all that kind of stuff and fusing it together to be like, hey, and I like the fact that they're like, yeah, this is basically Suicide Squad. It's just that we can't use humans anymore. However, creatures are different. And I'm just like, all right, I can get behind that. That's a good enough explanation for what happened in Corto Maltese and in the Suicide Squad, to be like, what, y'all are using prisoners to do this? No, screw that. Like, and the fact that you're knocking time off their sentences, screw that. Like, that's not a part of the justice system. So I can understand and really, really appreciate that. And I can really, really appreciate how these monsters are being treated. especially with society. There's a couple characters I'm sure that you and I are going to get into really, really well. Like Weasel is a character that I'm like, oh, that is a great backstory to like
Mhm.
what this is going on. So I think James Gunn does it again to make me care about villains or characters that I never would have thought I'd care about, and then like the characters that are just like Rick Flag Senior this time. I'm just like, yeah, that guy's a knob, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, we could start at Rick Flag.
Yeah,
I did find it weird. I'm like, this is just the storyline from the first Suicide Squad that James Gunn didn't
bingo.
do.
Yeah,
Like a Flag
except
falls in love with the person he's supposed to kill, and it screws him over.
yeah, except for the fact that it wasn't manipulated by Wallow this time. That's the only difference. And I'm like,
No, in
okay,
fact,
but
she's
still,
kind of
it's
annoyed that it went that way.
yeah, because she's like, damn it, I got to repeat the same thing with the same Flag family. Like,
Well, I
god
mean, I
damn.
guess in this movie they're not, or this show they're not acknowledging that that happened with his son.
I mean, fair enough.
I think they're just being like, it is your son. So, like, obviously, the first thing that I would imagine people sticks out for people is in the first episode when she's explaining, like, yeah, Weasel's like the only person that came back because he
Mhm.
had what it took, and she's like, oh, sorry, because we know that Rick Flag's son died in the Suicide Squad by
Yep,
James
Peacemaker
Gunn.
killed him.
Yeah, and there's other like Peacemaker stuff, like the
Mhm.
fact that they can't use humans anymore is a direct result from the Peacemaker show, and or
Yep.
like that Economos has a limp, and he even
Mhm.
says, "Because I was fighting an alien invasion." The woman's like, "Yeah, okay, whatever," but it's like,
Yeah,
"Yep,
it's
we
like you're
watched
making
that. We
this
know."
up.
I
Yep.
I remember the very funny moment where that injury happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's stuff like that, but yeah, the team is made up, as you said, of monsters that they've got at Bell. They call it
Belle
Reeve,
Reeve.
even though it's not how it should be pronounced.
Mm.
But what do I know?
Mm.
Um, and they just to skip to the end. I thought it was funny that this person, Fantastic Frankie, she actually hosts the official WB show, like DC show after show for this, but on her personal account it was just like, you don't piss me off. You at the end of this, you showed me King Shark, not voiced by Stallone this time,
Mhm.
and so you mean to tell me he could have gone instead of like Nina? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? And I
Yeah,
was like, yeah,
that
yeah.
did bother me
I
a
I
little
would
bit.
have rather that. Like, I mean, just for the sake of her still being alive. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's just like, yeah. But yeah,
especially because Nina was such a good character too. Like I felt so much empathy towards Nina, and like obviously it was supposed to be the heart of the whole
you're supposed to feel
crew
it. You are
for
supposed to
sure.
be like, well, she's not meant for this world. But
Mhm.
I mean, I wanted. I guess I'm trying to pick my words carefully here. It's not that I was like, what a terrible character, but I was kind of just like, so she's just gonna get picked on the whole time. Like, at no point
Mhm.
does she ever get to fight back, and then she dies. And I understand the um tragedy of that, but I think
Mhm.
that is part of what I was talking about before, with like just the like gratuitously dark. Like, she doesn't
Yeah,
really have any wins other than the bride be not even explicitly saying I'm your friend to her face,
yeah.
but
Like
just
after she's dead,
she can
she
imply, like she can
yeah.
infer, like, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm her friend. Um, but yeah, that was kind of something that still didn't work for me in the second
Mm.
watch. Was just you're the whole time like, I feel bad for her every time, but it's just like people are picking on her, and I'm like, so she doesn't
Yep.
have superpowers. She just looks like that. How does she actually have? And they kept saying like, oh, when she gets in the water, she'll fuck shit up. And I was just like, I mean, she probably
No.
would have got away with their plan at the end. I know we're not going episode by episode, but like,
Yeah.
she probably would have got away with their plan, but she didn't, and was very easily killed after the fact. So it's
Yeah.
just like, oh, like, I don't know what she's doing there, which is why I brought up the Fantastic Frankie thing. That was funny but true, which was like,
Mhm.
you had King Shark right there.
Yep.
And you
It's
sent her.
It's absolutely true. King Shark would have actually pulled the thing off and all that kind of stuff, but it wouldn't have had any tension toward the end, and it would just been like a team of people that were just like, all right, we're watching them do creature Suicide Squad stuff, but they're
Mhm.
creatures. great. It would have made me care less about that final episode if it was King Shark. That's the only thing I will say in response to it.
Oh
But
yeah,
absolutely, if they're establishing King Shark is in this and a part of the new squad of creature commandos at the end, then I'm like, yeah, you should have used King Shark. There's no reason you shouldn't have.
yeah.
Like
No,
that's
I
silly.
don't think it makes a better emotional impact if it's not her. It's
Hmm.
just store like logistically, obviously, it should not be her.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, who else is? I mean, I don't know. How do you want to do it? Do you want to just go through the different characters?
I mean, we started off with Frank Grillo's Rick Flag Sr. and we actually didn't even get the chance to talk about him too much.
I just thought it was very. It's just the same thing. He falls in love with the princess,
Yeah, he falls in
and
love with the
so at the
princess.
this princess that's at the heart of this is from Pokolistan.
Yeah,
She's like
Princess Svetlana.
she I guess having seen the whole thing, I'm just supposed to assume that she knew that this was a thing she could do to him to
Yep.
get her to get him on her side. But she's just out the gate like we're gonna fuck. I want this to
Yep.
happen, and there's all sorts of reasons why they shouldn't. And she's like, "Oh, don't treat me like a little girl. I'm gonna be a queen. Like this is what I want." And then she does, like I think second episode, eventually get what she wants,
Yep.
and from that point on, yeah, Rick Flag is pretty much like, well, I gotta protect her.
Yep.
Um,
Ricky
which I
thinking
guess,
with his dicky.
yes, but I mean, yes, 100%. But also, given who he is and the information he has, I also wouldn't fault him for being like, no, she's not the bad guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's for me like one step too far complicated plan that she's
Mhm.
got going on with spies and Clayface.
Yeah.
But basically, she's trying to take over the world,
Mhm.
and uh, Cersei is basically you can't let her win. You got to kill her. And the
Mhm.
whole argument is like, well, you're a bad guy, so obviously you want to kill her. And
Mhm.
like, why do you care if the world ends? And I like that Cersei's like, even the devil doesn't want the world to end. Like
Yeah.
I'm telling you, don't believe her. She's evil. She's gonna kill us all. And she shows her vision to Amanda Waller.
Mhm.
And I I saw a bunch of people being like, what if it's fake? I'm like, I just feel like the show does a very good job of being like, this isn't fake. This
I
is
mean,
this is what's gonna happen.
it's kind of funny that people had the response of what if it's fake when they had the debate internally within that episode to be like, is this fake? Is this clairvoyance? Is this like they
And they're
had a
like
good debate about
yeah, like
that
they're
with the
like, oh, how
Commandos.
convenient. She's like, well, the doctor is like, she can't pick what she sees, and
Yeah.
when she had a vision like this last time, it was true. Like
Mhm.
this is what happened to Themyscira. Like this is just a thing that happens for her, and now she's motivated to stop it from happening.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, but like you should show it to Amanda Waller because she already is. And I'm like, I just feel like it's true. I don't think there's any ambiguity here.
Yeah,
Like,
there's
yeah, the
no way you
princess
can
is a
really
bad
argue
guy,
it. Yeah.
and the vision is what could happen if they don't intervene.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's like, how could a hot young blonde white woman be evil? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think you're paying close enough attention to history.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
When
I
was
think people wanted it to be more complicated, but as I said, it just feels like too many steps. Like the whole Clayface of it, I'm like, I don't understand what she's doing, and then the like spy. I get it. Like the broad strokes of her plan is get the commandos on her side to protect her from
yeah.
any potential threat once it kind of gets out that this is
Mhm.
what her plan is.
Mhm.
And specifically, if they killed off Cersei, that would
Mhm.
have been it because that's the only person telling people what is really about to happen.
Yeah, she's the one saying
Uh,
the sky's falling.
but it doesn't work because Rick Flag is ultimately not an idiot, and it's like, well, I don't have to just kill her because you say so.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it was very smart to sideline him for those last few episodes to be like, yeah, he's in a coma right now.
mhm.
Like there's tension in that ticking time situation, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's actually good writing to do this, but it I don't get the Clayface part of it. Aside from the fact that it's like, oh, cool, it's Rupert Murdoch, and like, wait, what's no Rupert Thorne.
Rupert Thorne, yeah,
Rupert
no,
Thorne
I
and
think the
Clayface from the
Clayface thing.
Batman animated series. I'm like, these are cool little cameos, and I'm like, James Gunn gets to flex and be like, hey, yeah, I get to play with all these characters now. Aren't you excited? I'm like, yeah, that part's of it's cool.
But
then
I
you
think the
kill him right
Clayface
away.
is. I guess I don't really understand the timing of it, but from what I understand was there was the doctor that, or the professor doctor that was
Mhm.
actively like, no, she's telling the truth. This is, and then she needed to sideline that person,
Mhm.
so she just got Clayface to kill her and then take her life. I guess,
I
like,
think
so that
what
if anyone checked in, they'd be like, well, yeah, she's still alive.
I
But then
think
also
if
spin the like, no, it's not really what
yeah,
Cersei said.
I think if anything, what it does prove is like the princess, Princess Alana had like an actual good plan to make it seem like that she wasn't starting the war and that
Hmm.
everything that she was going to do was retaliation. That's the only thing I can really think about, and I'm like, okay, that is effective because that's quite manipulative to put out there in the world, in the world of like, oh yeah, like we were attacked, therefore
Hmm.
we will burn the world down and all that kind of stuff. I think that was effective, but like, I if you have Clayface involved, why don't you have Clayface doing more characters instead of just one? That's my
Well,
question.
that's, I don't know that he's not doing more. It's just they killed him at one point, so she like
Yeah.
maybe couldn't. I don't know. It just, it felt like too many steps for me. It wasn't as clean, and maybe I also
Yeah.
am just an idiot, which is very possible. Like I don't know.
I don't think you're an idiot. I think you would be sleep deprived.
Yeah.
As
But
a
yeah,
child.
so that is the big thing pushing the events is this
Mhm.
princess. Like it
Yes.
doesn't really expand beyond that, other than knowing the backstories of the different characters,
Mhm.
which we can kind of go through. Which I guess Bride is the de facto. Well, she is officially the leader by the end, but
Yes.
the Bride,
Which I like.
yeah,
Because
she's
Rick Flag
she's a great
Sr. is
character.
not great.
Sometimes I was like, why does she let that person hit her like that? Because just
Hmm.
like when they're in the brothel, I was just like, what? You knew he was gonna hit you, and it doesn't matter for the fight. It was just like, I mean, I would have stopped them from hitting me before that, but like
Yeah.
whatever. That's you. You do your thing. You won ultimately.
Hmm.
But yeah, so she was made for Eric Frankenstein.
Hmm.
Apparently not the Frankenstein from the comics either. This is
Interesting.
a new character because I'm pretty sure, based on what I remember Coy Jandreau talking about. I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm name dropping. I just want to give people credit when I
Mhm.
hear from
Sure.
him. He was saying that Frankenstein is just the leader in the comics and not a bad guy. Well, I mean, he's not a shit person like this in
Yeah.
this show. So he said it's important that they state up front, this is Eric, not the Frankenstein you know from the
Mm,
comics, or obviously Frankenstein's monster from
sure.
movies and literature.
Mhm.
This is a character created for this show called Eric Frankenstein. And so his deal is he demands that Victor Frankenstein make him a bride. And Victor Frankenstein fucks the bride and
Yeah.
gets killed by Eric. Again, just some dark stuff that I was like, I don't need this.
Yeah.
But basically they spend decades, a century maybe, just
Yeah.
fighting each other because his bit. We talked about David Harbour last episode, or
Mhm.
yeah, when we talked about What If season 3. I'm just like, I was watching this and What If season 3 basically at the same time, and I was like, I at least find him funny in this
Yeah.
as Eric Frankenstein,
Mhm.
but it's like a one note bit of like, no, she likes me. Obviously she likes me. Why
I
else would she be doing this? And then the funny overreactions he has to his very clear lack of confidence.
yeah. I mean, this character doesn't annoy me quite so much as the Red Guardian character in that episode of What If, and largely because I'm like, okay, you're not human here. You don't have the social skills. You don't have the
And
ability to
also
think
he's just
through.
very
You
clearly the bad guy.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like all of that makes sense, and it's not out of place compared to who you're around, right? Constantly, people are just like, he's a kid, he's a child in this, and he's throwing temper tantrums and has the ability to just like destroy everything through that
And
process.
has a lot of luck with old women taking him into help.
Yes, Exactly.
Yeah, like
That was so bad when he killed the blind one. I
I
was like,
don't know
God
why, but I was
damn,
so angry
why?
at the dog for like going with him.
I was angry
I
at the
was like, "Hey,
dog for
fuck you,
that.
dog."
Yeah, what the hell is this? Like, that ain't loyalty. Like, your master's
I
just...
mean, I understand the way they wrote it was like the dog didn't get to see that he killed the woman, and the dog and him clearly had a relationship. But I
Yeah.
was just like, "Hey, fuck you, dog.
Yeah.
You gotta be able to sniff that kind of stuff out."
Yeah. I didn't love that, but I mean, like, I didn't actually see the dog involved very much to the rest of the series too. It'd be different
No,
if it's
well,
like,
that
oh yeah,
dog's
this
way
is my
dead
thing.
because that was like the 1800s, so that dog is dead.
Yeah.
Long gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I think so he's putting a wrench in things slightly. He's who takes, I mean, he doesn't, but like his adventure with Rick Flag is what takes Rick Flag out of commission for like the last couple of episodes. But basically, he fights Rick Flag because he sees him with the bride.
Yep.
And it is the funny exchange. I thought it was the funniest thing he did in the show is when he's like, he basically, you call her you're like the princess. I'm laughing, and then he starts crying, and he's like,
Yeah.
he's like, oh, you mean the bride? No, she's not my type, and I'm not her type. He's like, she's everyone's type, and so are you.
That's so fun. It was so funny to see that. That was great.
I liked that stuff. But he basically is like, no, like, if you help me with what I'm trying to do, then I'll help you with the bride. And just like that, he's constantly so like, even when he's basically dying, he's like, I really need your help, Rick. Did she mention me? And was it in a positive light or was it negative? Like, I really need you to stay alive so you can give me this information.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's basically he has another funny part where he kills someone just because he's like, you're mocking me for not being able to make a beard like Rick Flag, aren't you? And the guy's like, no. He's like, I think you are. But yeah, he's definitely something that the show seems slightly concerned with, especially the way it starts with the whole Sons of Themyscira, like that. I guess what reads as somewhat incel. Vibe of these men that think that like, well, I can't get sex, and I'm enough to take it by force because that's a thing that happens later on in the episode. But this Eric character definitely feels the same way of like, oh no, like, I mean, he only has eyes for one woman, but for him, it's like, oh yeah, I can't get it with the woman I like, and I'm gonna have to force myself on her. And you're just like, it is interesting that it's highlighted. I don't know that we do anything with it to add any extra commentary on it.
It just, to me, was one of those things. I thought he would be ultimately more involved in this than he was. It just seemed like he was more comedic beat and just something that's going to come back in season 2 to constantly be again a pestering annoyance. But so that was a weird scene. That was annoying to me, to be like, oh, he's not actually more involved in this. Like, I thought he would actually interact with the bride at some point and like have an understanding.
He just gets shot right away. By the time he meets her in present day, it goes pretty much, well, not even like the other ones seem like there's more of an exchange between them, even though it's fighting.
Yeah,
seems like there's a bigger fight that goes on anytime they meet back up. But this one is like she just shoots him right away and spits on him.
Yep.
And I was like, all right, yeah, good, move on, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's the bride, and so
and Eric Frankenstein, by virtue,
because they don't basically, you just know that she can get shit done.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they do anything with her other than she's got a soft spot for Nina, and
she really doesn't.
Him. She does. I just don't. That is the interesting thing in theory about the show, which is these aren't heroes, but she does have a soft spot for Nina. She's just, and I think there's a scene where she gets captured, and Rick Flag is like, "I thought we got monsters, not damsels in distress," and I took that as she took that to heart, because it's paid off at the end of the episode when she's like, "Hey, you wanted monsters. This is how monsters get shit done. Like, you got your monsters." But I think throughout that, she's then put in a position of being like, "Well, then I'm never gonna show anything." I think, in theory, that is what's going on. Is her refusing to ever be vulnerable ever again.
Yeah.
in that context.
Yeah. There is also a little bit of the interesting discussion in the bride and the women at the brothel and all that kind of stuff. It's like, hey, like you're looking at this as a respect thing, but you're doing this
Yeah,
with your
you sell your
body. We're
body to
doing this
fight.
with our
We sell our body for
exactly.
that. Yeah.
And it was an interesting discussion to see like how she was actually the bride was actually going to process that and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, yeah, that scene served more a shock value than anything else. I'm just kind of like, yeah, this is kind of dark place to take this very cheerfully animated thing.
Hmm.
But like you said, there's a lot of shock value in here that I don't know if I appreciate that you didn't appreciate that you didn't know whether or not you appreciated that much. But I certainly was like, these are good discussions. They do feel weird though, but I do appreciate the context of like, yeah, this is a brothel. This is how we're
Hmm.
going to look at this, and all that kind of stuff, and the very real kind of reactions to those incel men that kind of go.
Yeah, I think I was also very what's the word? Eh, Surprised, I guess, is what I would say. I think I said it up top. The stuff that I remember from James Gunn before Guardians of the Galaxy didn't feel as interested in actually unpacking these dark thoughts he has and that desire to be better after that. And I'm not saying that everything he does needs to be like that, but
Mhm.
uh it did feel like we were on a good roll with him being able to um put the sliders up and down on the levels of how personal it is for him
Mhm.
and his life journey and how just relatable the content was.
Mhm.
um yeah, like the just so people know where I'm at, like I'm not trying to compare it to these other things, but just where I'm at, like the Guardians thing for me is very interesting to watch someone be like, hey, I was abrasive and shitty because I was afraid people wouldn't love me. And so those three movies explore through different
Mhm.
characters, but mainly Rocket. And I would say everyone else has a version of that, but Rocket, he's even said, is like the very clear, like, through line
Yeah.
for him. But
Mhm.
everyone, including Yandu, is like a version of that, of him, of the, and
Mhm.
I'm going to piss people off just so that they don't have a chance. So I don't have a chance to feel like they rejected me because of who I really am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then what I liked about Suicide Squad, as I said, that didn't feel as personal, but it felt thoughtful about the way that the United States in particular uses people until they don't want to use them and then they become the bad guys.
Mhm.
And you could say that's how he felt maybe about Disney, but I don't think that's top of mind for him. It might be something he was working through, but I don't think that was
Sure.
top of mind for him.
Mhm.
And I think then when we get to Peacemaker, what I liked was that was it's very violent, it's very bombastic, but we talked about like that dad being that version of like generational racism that he has to
Mhm.
combat to be better. And yes, there's sexism involved with it, but it really felt based on his dad being part of the Ku Klux Klan that they were dealing with racism in particular
Mhm.
and how that might apply to James Gunn and him realizing how he may have come off as racist in the past and working through that. This one I was just like, it doesn't feel as deep as those three things I just explained. This one felt
I
like
would agree.
this feels like, oh yeah, like you'd be a monster if these things happened to you, except for Nina, which is interesting on paper, but I don't know that they did Nina justice throughout. But on paper, yes, she had she had a loving parent there, but then just
Mhm.
had the rest of the world shit on her. So maybe
Yeah.
that. But then that's why I'm like, so you're saying that like she couldn't have the fortitude to stand up for herself because like unlike everyone else, she actually had someone in her corner.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
it, it just felt like weird and not fully developed.
So, I mean, you're right in the sense where it didn't have that deeper level of working through those intersectionalities and all that kind of stuff, like the titles that you mentioned. But to me, I'm like, okay, it didn't need that through line. It did display certain things that I'm like, no, he understands, he gets it, and all that kind of stuff. Like the Weasel thing. When they show Weasel's backstory and go like, oh yeah, he killed like 12 kids
27
or
kids,
something,
yeah.
like 27 kids. And you show what actually they show what actually happens. I love the idea that the cops in that point in time were had the ability to choose to save the kid or to arrest Weasel. And what they chose to do is arrest Weasel and let the kid die. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, he clearly understands what's going on here.
Well, the
in
cops
these
are
kind of things.
consistently bad in the show. Like
Yes.
they killed Nina's dad when all he was doing was like giving her words of encouragement.
Yeah.
Before they left the kid to die, were just actively shooting at him while he had kids.
Yep.
Kind of like what we talked about in Batman Cape Crusader, that
Mm-hmm.
the scene where he's like, I can't take the kids because they're just shooting at me. So it's gonna be on you, Jim. I like. So yeah, as I said, there's things where I'm like, oh yeah, I get what he's going for, but it doesn't feel explored, and I do think that doesn't make it inherently bad. But at a certain point, you start to become someone, an artist, someone who makes things that gets compared to your oeuvre.
Yep.
So yeah, this might be better than something else someone does, but it's James Gunn, and we hold him at a different tier in terms of someone who's thoughtful about these things.
To me, I don't need every one of his properties to have addressing those kind of things, because then it feels
it's not about what
performative
he's
to me.
addressing, it's about the level that he's addressing it.
Gotcha. Yeah, this one clearly didn't have it. Not quite so much as the other ones. I think like when we review later on this year, like Superman and all that kind of stuff, we'll see whether or not he still has that interest of exploring those things, because the issue is, unfortunately, the political landscape is changing again, back to what it was 4 years ago when it was like really, really bad. So I don't know if the idea of what he's going for now and the releases are going to line up with that quite so much, or if he's going to lay off the gas like other companies are. You know what I mean? It's kind of tricky to see what's happening right now, and not see that involved in this property as well. It's okay, yeah, Trump is president again. They're attacking woke culture. Facebook is like getting rid of all the fact checkers and all that kind of stuff. And however you feel about it, it's just like, okay, there was clearly a period of time where the things that he was releasing, Peacemaker and the Suicide Squad and all that kind of stuff during that Biden administration was, yeah, there was very, very much front and center woke politics being discussed, and that was aligned with that. Here, it's not so much. And I don't know if that's like the first sign of him being like, we're letting off the gas of this stuff. Not that he's being performative, but that he may have gotten feedback to be like, this is a little bit excessively performative and we need to scale it back. So I don't know what he's going for going forward with the DCU. I hope that the core of what he's doing is trying to tell a good story with the things that he's learned about social justice and all that kind of stuff over the past 4 years, and just being like, that is a part of the backstory, not a part of the front story. That's all I really care about, to me.
No, I just want to make it clear, as I said, and I know you heard me, but just to be clear, it's not that I was like, I wish this was more about social justice issues. It's that I didn't feel that he went as deep with whatever it is he was trying to say here as he has in the past. Like I said, I don't think that the Suicide Squad, yes, it's definitely very political as you bring in America, but it wasn't like to me very specific, like, oh wow, like so he does understand how like white people come off to black people, like in Peacemaker or something like that.
Sure,
like it was just like, yeah, this is and he might not even see it. Again, we've talked about this a couple of times, where I do think that sometimes people are working things out subconsciously. So maybe even if I asked him directly, hey, was this about how you feel about the American government? It would be hard because it's so tied to it. But like, he might have just been like, no, I just felt used, and this was the story that came out. But it's still things that obviously he is aware of and thoughtful of, versus this, where I was like, the only thing I can see is what makes a monster. And that's why I brought up that thing about Nina having someone in her corner who actually loved her, but being ultimately the one that gets like stabbed to death and never has a moment to stick up for herself. She sticks up for the women in the brothel. She likes the bride, but like, even when she comes back after their mission and they're picking on her for her food, all she says is, well, I'm hungry. And I'm like, still? Like, what's going on here? Come on. Yeah. So it just didn't feel fully explored, because I'm not saying she needs to, but like more time with her and seeing what she feels about that would be better.
Right. And to me, it did feel well explored in the sense where I look at it from the perspective of, okay, this is what happens when you don't have boundaries and you're a good, kind, empathetic person, is that people walk all over you, all this kind of stuff. And ultimately it does lead to your demise for the most part. This was, to me, that was well explored because that's what I saw in Nina's character is just like, yeah, you are, and I like that the bride says that, like, you're the most human out of all of us in the sense where Nina had the kindness, the caring, the empathy, and all that kind of stuff, had people that loved her versus literally no one else did in that kind of world. They were rejects.
Well, they got it taken away from them. They all had
exactly, right?
They had it taken away.
Versus
and she
Nina's,
had hers taken away too.
She did, but Nina's was more like, hey, I can't be a part of this. And then
but that's what I'm saying. It's not that clean, right?
Because it's definitely not clean.
Yeah. Because even I was at first like, oh, she's the only one that had love, but like they all had something they lost. Like that's kind of what they're getting at. That like you lose the thing that makes you human, you become a monster, and we saw what that was for everyone. Like Weasel's ability, like even though it's kind of playful too, his episode is really sad when you see why he's moving while he's sleeping, and she's like, I don't know, he's probably just chasing squirrels like a fucking idiot. But it's like, no, that's him trying to save the girl he couldn't save.
Yeah, that's his trauma and PTSD flashbacks.
So I think that him and Nina are the closest because they aren't inherently mean-spirited characters. They just look the least human. And well, I mean, the bride looks human, but she's got like dead skin all over her.
Sure.
It's like they look the easiest to be like, that's an animal, and you see that they aren't as mean-spirited as the others, but Weasel still has moments where he's going to do, like, he has the fortitude to be like, hey, fuck you, no, I'm saving the princess. I don't care what you told me. I'm going to save the princess. I'm going to bite Dr. Phosphorus. I'm not going to let what happened to me before happen again. I'm going to save the girl. And so that's what I mean by not fully explored, is that you're showing me these things, and 100% I get what you're saying. If you're a people pleaser, that will ultimately lead to your demise. Not being stabbed by a princess, but the death of your ability to enjoy and grow. But then this is TV and this is storytelling, so why are you showing me all these different versions of how it could go without properly drilling down on what makes Nina different?
That is completely valid and it's completely fair. It's just, like I said, it's just one of those things that I saw in it, but I can 100% see why where you're coming from in the sense where it's not properly explored in that sense. Because, she does feel like the whole walking mat, there's no character growth on her part in the sense where she never learns how to assert boundaries or stand up for herself or, all that kind of stuff. And like you said, she stands up for the women in the brothel, never herself. So that's the part of Nina's character that is tragic, that sucks, is just like, there's no actual growth there. There's no whatever. And she's getting beaten up on the entire time. And it's just like, oh, this is tough to watch for sure. The only thing that being picked on with the food back at the facility was good for was the fact that it forced the bride to stand up. It forced
Dr. Phosphorus didn't physically do anything, but he was there to be like, no, I'm not standing for you making fun of her or picking on her. Again, I like, it's not that I think the character is bad. It's just, I was like, this doesn't feel like, that's what I said, the attention to certain details that James Gunn has shown before didn't feel present for me in this. And while he can set up a bunch of markers that help, I think you have the exact right reading of like Nina. And the unfortunate thing is that also plays into me being like, why does it have to be so dark? But like, but it is like, so it's like two things I don't love. It was just like, yes, I see what you're saying. I didn't see it at first, but now that you've said it out loud, I get it exactly. But like, it's also like, but then it's like, why so dark? In addition to the other things I said about the parallels and who gets to live, who doesn't get to live.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's like James Gunn declaring his like a poll and the idea of like, yeah, this is DC, we're gonna go darker with the subject matter and the storylines and all that kind of stuff. Because the alternative flip side is when you look at the Guardians cast and what where Mantis lands at the end of Guardians 3, that is someone that is a people pleaser and empath that has learned how to assert
Hmm.
boundaries and all that kind of stuff, and does her own thing, explores growth, and moves on from the team and as well as Drax in that sense, right?
Yeah.
So the idea there is like, okay, I don't know if that's James Gunn being like, we're DC, we're gonna go darker. We're these are gonna be the more tragic things that we're going to see, because not life doesn't always have happy endings.
No, I think it's
But
not
Marvel
DC as a whole.
tries to
I think he's like
manufacture it.
Creature Commandos is the dark thing, which is
Sure.
fair. I think
Yeah.
very clearly he's not trying to do an extremely dark Superman, although that trailer opens up with
It
Superman
looks pretty
battered
dark.
and bleeding.
Yeah.
But like the way I've heard him talk about it, he's not trying to do Man of Steel again. He's like,
Right.
I want people to like Superman and feel hope from Superman.
Right.
That's going to be the point of that movie. So I see why you would start the trailer that way, so that people, when they see the movie, can feel the increase in hope. But yeah, I don't think he's trying to make a statement for all of DC, because I think what is smart about what he said is we're telling good stories, and so that means it doesn't have to have a house style.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think so. Yeah, he's just saying Creature Commandos is going to be dark, and I don't think that, as I said, I don't want to make clear, I don't think that makes this inherently bad.
No.
It's just something that I bump up against, but I can see how people would really enjoy this.
Yeah. Because to me, one of the things about Nina that was really interesting to me, when I saw what happened ultimately to her character, I'm like, this embracing the whole Eastern style of storytelling, where you regularly get stories that lead to no good conclusions for their characters and all that kind of stuff, right? That's a very Eastern thing, and for it being animated, I'm like, are they trying to run that tight walk of like anime and all that kind of stuff, explore those kind of themes? I don't know if that was intentional or not, but to me, I'm like, there's an element of that going on, because when I look at Eastern storytelling, one of the best examples I could think of is Infernal Affairs, which was made by Scorsese into The Departed, and the very unpopular thing, I will say, like Departed versus Infernal Affairs. Infernal Affairs did it better, because the idea there, the theme of Buddhism was, okay, birth is pain, death is pain, life is pain, but death is a release from that pain. And I don't know if that was a part of this, of Nina's character being like, okay, Nina actually gets to die and not have to suffer anymore, not have to suffer loss of all that kind of stuff, bullying, but the rest of the creatures kind of do, in the sense where they have to continue being used as Amanda Waller's new Suicide Squad, and being disposable and being used for missions and all that kind of stuff, and being still used as creatures. I don't know if that was a part of it too, because but the way I looked at it, I was like, okay, that could be an interesting element of, this is just reality. Sometimes you can be a good person and it does not work out for you, and most likely people will walk all over you and take advantage of you.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about GI Robot?
I love GI Robot.
Yeah,
Alan Tudyk is just such a good.
He's not GI Robot.
No,
that's Sean Gunn.
Oh no, wait, that's Dr. Phosphorus. Yeah. So GI Robot, I really liked. Just I'm like, yeah, I like your bit. The whole thing is you killing Nazis. I love seeing
another
that.
thing where I saw people being like, "Oh, is he like joking when he goes to that, when he's first on TV and he's like, did you check everyone's cards, because there might be Nazis here, and I will kill them." And people are like, "Oh, like is that a sense of humor?" Like they asked the actor straight up. They asked Sean Gunn, and he was like, "No." Like he doesn't have humor. He's just,
it's a robot.
Like, and I was like, this is so very straightforward to me that in a show where I will admit I didn't fully understand the villain's plan, but there were certain things where I'm like, no, he's a robot. He's just actively like, I want to kill the robot. I want to kill Nazis because that's what I was built to do. And maybe the growth is that I enjoy doing it, but he says actively like, I don't really have a say in this. Like, that's what I was built to do.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, but just tell me, what do you want to do? And he's like, I want to see my boys again so that we can kill Nazis. Not like, we're going to just hang out. He's like, no, because that was good killing Nazis with them. I want them back so we can kill some more Nazis. Yeah, I really like that he just stood on business and was like, nah, I want to kill Nazis.
Yeah,
and,
straight up. I love that he gets an upgrade at the end too. Because I'm like,
yeah, you think he's dead. Up. You think Cersei blew him up for good, but I remember when we did that Ninja Turtle show, and they were just like, "Oh, we could just rebuild him," and I was like, I had that in the back of my mind. So when he showed up again, I was like, "Right, yeah, you could just rebuild him."
Yeah,
but sad for Nina because she didn't get to She didn't get to see that. But yeah, I think he was good, and I liked. I don't even really know how Nina got in, like what people wanted her in jail for, other than did she scare people?
She just scared people. That's about it.
Great.
That's about it. It's like, it's a monster.
Okay, because you see everyone else is in jail for killing or suspected of killing. Like, Weasel didn't kill those kids. He was actively trying to save them, but they pinned that on him. And GI Robot actively killed a bunch of Nazis, which is funny. The guy who took them to the meeting is voiced by Michael Rooker, who's Yondu. And it's just because everyone's like, "Oh, he's so nice in this." I'm like, well, "He's a Nazi. What do you mean so nice in this? He's a Nazi."
I think that's the interesting thing is that people can't understand complexity in the sense where I'm like, no, Nazis can be nice people to other Nazis that share their beliefs. It's when you come into conflict with their beliefs that they're gonna turn and be monsters. Like, that's the point. Like, you have to understand.
I like him.
So weird.
His line delivery of Nazis. Wait, what'd you say?
It was good.
This is good stuff. I like that he the way he died. I mean, he didn't die, but I liked the way that when you think he's dying, he goes out saying the cheers to the Tin Man thing. Like, that was cool.
Yeah.
And that he was like, "Hey, friend Nina, we got to fight Nazis together again," which I was like, she didn't do anything. Like, she was just there while you were fighting Nazis.
Yeah.
And I don't bring that up to be pedantic. I bring it up to be like, yeah, she's never really like throwing hands in this show.
No, she's just like staying out of trouble and all that kind of stuff. That's it.
Because I was so convinced they were gonna reveal a cool power she had later.
I thought they were gonna do a Diablo thing. You know what I mean? It's just like, okay, not only are you able to swim amazingly underwater, but you can also control it too. Like, I thought she was gonna be like, whoosh, bring up some sort of typhoon or something like that to kill the princess. No,
it looked more like the princess would be able to do something like that. By the time she was stabbing her, it had like the glowing eyes. I was like, what is it that she's got going on there?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's GI Robot. Like, it's a pretty straightforward thing. He wants to kill Nazis. And,
very straightforward character.
And then he's back at the end. Weasel, we've kind of talked about. He didn't kill those kids. He obviously has a soft spot for playing. Like, when the wolves try to attack him, he's like, we could just be playing, and that was great. And as I said, I really like that he isn't just completely brainless. That he is like, oh, you're trying to kill the in his head girl. I know he's conflated the girl he couldn't save with the princess at that point. The visuals in the show are very good. Like, the visual storytelling is very good. And so I like that he's like, oh, I'm going to save her. And it's not that
making that mistake twice.
Was able to swim and do it. He was like, I'm going to do something, even though it was very clear he was going to drown or something like that. Like, he was like, but like, I appreciated that they gave him that, because obviously early on, and I didn't mind it when he has like the human rights lawyer there, and she's just like, does this do anything for you? Like, he's seeing these pictures and he's just like licking himself and not really engaging. I like that by the end of that episode, you see that it's something that bothers him a lot, obviously, but that he acts on the fact that he has that regret. So
Absolutely.
I like that about Weasel. Dr. Phosphorus, interesting, because he's definitely the most. This is Alan Tudyk. He's the one that's like a Batman villain. His episode has, I mean, Batman's in the other episode as well, but he's dead in that one. He's alive in the Dr. Phosphorus one.
Yeah, because correct me Isn't this like I got Batman Beyond from
I
that?
don't know if that was Dr.
I don't
Phosphorus,
know if
but that is
I'm
the visual I had of
that.
Batman Beyond,
Yeah.
but I don't know if it's the same character.
Okay.
I think
Because
that's like Max Lord, like goes.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
Max
Because
Lord
I
does a certain
yeah.
like
Okay.
atomic or something. But yeah,
Sure.
um, yeah, he's interesting. I don't. I like. I liked his quips. I
Hmm.
guess. Yeah, I had a hard time with the like. Like this was probably the most like, oh, this is just for shock value to me when Rupert Thorne is like, not only do you have to look at his family being dead, but you have to hear him being upset about it while they force him to put his hands in their blood and paint their faces and stuff. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't need this. I don't, like,
Yeah.
this is, and I'm sure that this justifies how violent he is in like the episodes we watched, like
Hmm.
putting his middle finger through people's faces, melting people's mouths and stuff.
Hmm.
I get it, but I was just like, I could have just assumed. I don't need to see this
Yeah,
anymore. This
it
is
was
a
a
bit
lot
much.
to make us see so close up and so like intimate and all that kind of stuff. It was hard to see, but it was good storytelling because it made me feel for sure. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this is
Because but I think what I liked the most out of that episode is just how he just played with that kid until
yes.
her parents got there.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're seeing that he has no problem killing kids because he killed Rupert Thorne's family, but
Right.
I was like, they're not gonna make him kill this girl. Like, there's no way he can survive the show if he kills this girl right now who did nothing
Yeah.
to him. So like,
Yeah.
there wasn't that much tension. It was just more me being like, oh, that's nice that she's not scared of him, and he's trying to like meet her halfway with the, oh yeah, like I guess I do look like a skeleton. Oh yeah, I
Hmm.
guess yeah, it does make me look like I'm smiling. Uh, or sometimes like I don't even know what that word is, but okay,
Hmm.
like sure. And they just are playing together, but yeah, I was just a bit like, this is a bit much
Yeah.
with the let's make him do this, and I like that he's there for the bride at a certain point. Like he kind of gives her a
Hmm.
pat on the back when she leaves after killing the princess.
Hmm.
Uh, he obviously can see she's upset, and I like that when they're back in Belle Rev, she's like, or I guess not Rev, Belle Reeve. They're like, she's like, what does this make us friends? He's like, I think so. And it's like, that's very funny. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
was just confused because I thought like anything that touches him is gonna melt. Apparently he can control it because he was like
yeah.
tossing up the
I
kid.
just based that off of what I saw. I don't know
Yeah.
the character. I was just like, obviously, if they're spending this much time showing this shit,
Hmm.
he must be able to control it. Like, I
Yeah,
don't think that's an
because
accident. Like, oh shit, we forgot he can't touch people.
yeah, because he was just like giving off all that radiation. I like how like
Oh,
that
Waller.
interaction, yeah, with Waller's. I think of it as a free vasectomy, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
she's like, hey, if you don't share a room with him, it shouldn't be that big of a problem.
yeah, yeah. It's just it was just one of those things. I'm like, what is the limitation? Like, what is this power set? Like, he
I just
must be
feel
able to
like the show's
control
not
it, but
interested in that.
yeah, yeah, they're
I was
more
just like,
interested
yeah,
in
babe, like
character story and
yeah,
stuff like that, which is good.
he's a monster.
Yeah.
Except for kids. I like the. I mean, it's before you have to actually watch his family die, but I like that when he's begging for his life, Rupert Thorne's like, "You're an asshole! Like you're throwing your wife under the bus." He's like, "No, no, no, that's not what's going on." I was like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, yeah, like it's before he turned into this, he was problematic."
Yeah. Yeah, he was because he was just like, "Hey, I'm just a scientist." I'm like, "No, you know what you're working on though.
Hmm.
Like, you're you're not just a scientist. You're not.
Yeah,
This
and
is
he's
not
saying like
just a
it doesn't
paycheck."
matter who I work with to get it done. I just need to get it done, and it's like,
Yeah,
you could. I feel like the wife was like, "You do have options, though," and he's like, "No, no, no, no. This is what
yeah,
we're doing."
yeah, yeah. It was just one of those situations. I'm like, "No, you're moving the goalposts on whether or not you're a shitty person. You're definitely a shitty person in this situation. You just have something you really care about that makes you very relatable, which is a family and a wife and all that kind of stuff." I'm like, "Great, but otherwise, you're doing shitty things as a scientist. You
Hmm.
really are." Um, and yeah.
So yeah, those are all the characters, right?
That's basically it. I mean, yeah, we got
Oh,
yeah, pretty much everyone.
one other thing I didn't like was his name Economos? I can't remember. The guy
Yeah,
from Peacemaker.
yeah,
I'm
Economos.
They made him seem like way shittier in this. Not, and I don't mean capable wise. Like he just kept making weird comments about women throughout the episode, and I thought that throughout the episode,
Mhm.
And I thought that in Peacemaker, the whole idea was like he gets bullied by Peacemaker and he's like pushing back and
Mhm.
maybe, and I don't mean that means that he's not problematic with women, but that didn't seem to be a focus, and I didn't understand why we were pivoting to this being a like it felt like every episode that he showed up in, he had one moment where he was just shitty about women,
Yeah.
and I didn't really get what they were going for there. That
Yeah,
didn't
neither
feel
do
like
I.
it carried over, considering they kept his limp, they kept the backstory of what he did, and
Mhm.
so it's just like I don't. What are we doing here? I don't love this.
Yeah, his character took a weird incelly turn
Yeah,
to a degree. It was not fun to watch that. It was unnecessary. It just felt
because it was like
unnecessary.
that was what Peacemaker was doing in that first season, and he
Yeah.
didn't seem to love that. And then
Hmm.
like, do you just need that presence in the show? Like the good guys do shitty things about women,
Yeah.
or can we not do this in season two?
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a weird choice. Didn't love it. Um, but it wasn't like, yeah, it was just weird. It was
Yeah,
weird. It was just good to see him back, but it was like, yeah,
he
this is,
doesn't have a lot of scenes, so it's
yeah,
not like the an overarching feeling I have. But now that we're thinking about I was thinking about it actively while watching, but now that we're recording, I'm like, I just wanted to point that out, that I thought it was a weird change in his character. Maybe I'll rewatch uh, Peacemaker and find out that it was always there.
yeah, he always
Maybe
had a
that's
little
on me.
twinge of it. Yeah.
Maybe that's on me. I obviously have the benefit of recording this after a couple of weeks of listening to the episode where they talked to Sean Gunn specifically about this, and I bring that up only because he was talking about how he knew when he was doing the Suicide Squad that he didn't actually kill those kids.
Mhm.
So it does feel like there is some trajectory for these characters from when they first appeared. So that's why the Economos thing felt weird to me, where I'm like, it didn't feel like he was like this in this,
Mhm.
and it does feel like James is like, hey, when they show up again, this is what's going to happen, or this is what we're going to fully explore. So yeah, I don't know. It was weird.
It is weird for that character to have that little bit of a turn. Well, I mean,
I mean,
clearly we're
he'll
going to
be
see
in
him back.
Peacemaker.
He'll be in
I mean,
Peacemaker.
I
He'll
assume.
probably
I
be
don't.
in this like season two if
Yeah,
he survives Peacemaker season two. Um, because I could very easily see that being a character that has a heroic death.
yeah.
In Peacemaker two.
I
But
think yeah, yeah. You definitely could.
mhm.
I mean, James brought back Mike Rooker, so even though
Yeah,
he's died in everything they've done, so like, he could just. I just say that because I feel like the actor is a friend of James Gunn, but I'm like, he could just come back as someone else. It's fine.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, what else is there to say? Like, I
I
feel
mean,
like we could.
the princess was an interesting character for sure.
Yeah, well, I guess we didn't really get into the princess.
No, we did not. Voiced by Maria Bakalova, who is
Yeah.
the same voice of Cosmo, the
Hmm.
dog, in Guardians 3.
Yeah, and Borat's daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Yes, I forget that a lot. Borat's daughter.
Yeah, I think. I just maybe if she had more time on screen, I would have felt more for her plot. Like for her, I don't mean her actual storyline, but for her scheme.
Yeah,
Because
the
I was
scheme
just like,
just
I
didn't
don't know,
make
like she's
sense.
just weirdly into Rick Flag,
Hmm.
and then they answer why that is.
Hmm.
But the whole like Clayface of all happens within one episode, so I don't have time to like think about it really. It's just
Hmm.
like they show them seeing it, and then at the end of the episode, she's like, "Yeah, this is what I saw," and I'm like, "Oh,
Hmm.
okay, sure." So
Yeah.
that's why I guess it just didn't feel within my grasp this time around. I was just like, she seems to be hypersexualized and
Hmm.
then not really involved for a big stretch of time.
Yep. It was a very inconsistently written character because like you, I was just like, I don't understand the motivations behind this, other than the fact that I'm like, okay, cool, you want to start a war, but to what end? And like, what is the goal overall for you to dominate the world? And the only cool thing I saw was like, okay, your soldiers definitely have tech that it seems that nobody else has, which is kind of
Hmm.
cool. Like seeing all those soldiers, her guards, in like the battle gear and all that. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's pretty cool. But like nowhere did it indicate. I'm like, oh, she wants to dominate the world. She wants to rule like
But
anything
that,
like that.
so yeah, I mean, yeah, ultimately she wants to dominate the world, but obviously through the United States.
Yeah,
I think that's the whole thing because her soldiers are so weirdly obsessed with being American as a
yeah, that was
joke.
funny.
I couldn't tell. Again, I say as a joke. I don't know. Like I couldn't tell if that was like them fucking with the creature commandos
Right.
to the point where I'm like, you're really leaning into the bride of it all, who's not like she's in America, but she's not. She wasn't
Mhm.
made there. She wasn't like presumably wasn't born there even before she became the bride.
Yeah.
And you really lean into her British accent and
Hmm.
her saying things like, "Oh well, our government." I'm like, it's not okay. I mean, I guess you feel responsible for the states, but it just felt like this weird disconnect of like, what's their deal here? Why are they acting like this? And I get that it was like, oh, they're goofy, but they're really the villains. But I was just
Hmm.
like, they're just so like very specific slice of American pop culture that they're interested in,
Yeah.
and wanting you to like that they're into it. And I couldn't tell if they were fucking with them or if that was just a funny quirk.
Yeah, I couldn't tell either. It was definitely one of those weird things. Like, like when in Japan you see some Japanese like places they're hyper Americanized, and you're
Mm-hmm.
just like, what the hell's going on here? This is so weird. It
Maybe they're
is
just
one of those
fascinated by
things.
it. Like maybe it
Yeah,
isn't. Like maybe it doesn't matter to them if you're offended or not. They're just like, this is funny to me, so I'm gonna keep talking about it.
yeah. I mean,
Like the restaurants, I feel like is there's an element of that. Like, yeah, you're gonna come buy the food, but also like, isn't this funny that this is what you guys do?
yeah. It was definitely really funny. Um, yeah, I just really like the idea of like, yeah, the callbacks to like what was popular 20 years ago, like the whole
Yeah,
what
what's
that
that?
kind of thing. It's like this is so great. It's so funny. Man, but I don't buy it in a world with internet. You know what I mean? It's just like in a world with internet, everyone's caught on to new pop culture stuff as opposed to like, okay, I could see how your broadcasting standards would have been 10 years behind way back in the early 2000s or whatever, but like it's a weird thing. It is goofy as hell. It's
Mm-hmm.
very goofy. And it was just entertaining for a little bit because
Yeah.
that was while I was trying to still figure out the show is early on enough where I'm like, okay, are they trying to do serious things and be funny or what's happening right now? Because I'm just like can't really figure it out.
Well, who knows? I mean, I'm assuming they're not coming back. I would imagine season two will be about something different.
Yeah, especially where
I
it
mean, and
ended
I
with
mean
the
the
bride shooting her in the head.
Polikistan people, not the characters.
Right, right.
Like, yeah, I think they're done. Maybe they'll come back for something else, but I think they're done for now. But yeah,
Yeah.
um,
Who knows if Frankenstein's going to be their new leader or something like that. But
I would hope that what Koi Genre said is right, and that they're like, no, this guy's like the antagonist for the bad guys,
right.
because that was interesting. I think that was especially during the Clayface fight that it's like
Hmm.
I think we sometimes not recently actually, but sometimes other than Craven, where you're like, if you make the bad guy the uh, lead, then you're basically just turning them into a good guy.
Yep.
But this show didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
At no point are you like, oh, I mean, other than Nina, who's not bad or anything really,
Hmm.
like, but she's just along for the ride, as you said. Like that's
Hmm.
part of the tragedy of her story. Um, these people will do bad things, and at no point are they put in a position where you're like, oh, you're just doing the thing that a hero would do. Like
Hmm.
Bride doesn't actually save Nina in time. Like she just kind of watches, like, oh fuck, like
Hmm.
what's gonna happen now? Oh no.
Yeah, she directly puts her in danger to begin with. Is just like,
Yeah,
hey,
like and so yeah, the fight with Clayface was like, we can watch a fight, but it's not like they're fighting for the right. They like Frankenstein is just like, or Eric is just like, I'm just trying to get to the bride, and
yeah.
we know like that's bad news if he gets to the bride.
Hmm.
And Clayface is just actively like, I'm gonna fuck you guys up because I'm a bad guy.
Hmm.
So I appreciated that we were able to watch stuff like that and not have it feel like, oh, they're just making the bad guys the good guys.
Hmm. Yeah, it was just bad guys consistently being bad guys. And it's
Mhm.
just like, okay, yeah, this essentially works as a Suicide Squad replacement. And we get to see all these other characters that, like, personally, I didn't know too much about. So that was a lot
Yeah, I
of
don't know
fun.
any of these characters.
Yeah.
I
And I
mean,
like the fact that the cameos were the characters that we did know, like Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman, and a lot of those kind of characters. Um, because it truly is effective from like a bad guy or villain's perspective that they're only a snippet of
mhm,
the whole thing. So I thought that part was really, really well done too.
I agree.
Mhm.
Do you want to rate it?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm giving this show a 7.
All right. I didn't see this coming. I'm giving it a 7.5.
Yeah.
I think that what I didn't really bring up was how much I appreciated the visual storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think I was gonna have it higher than you, but yeah, 7.5. It is not my favorite James Gunn thing, but
Mhm.
as you mentioned, certain things and what I thought the show was about, he's explored, just not to the degree I've seen him explore things
Yep.
in the past that I like. And
Mhm.
again, not the subject matter, just the detail in which he explores whatever it is he wants to explore.
I don't know if that's because now him and Saffron are like the gurus or like the
Yeah, but he had
overseers of the
this done before
DCU.
that happened.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's just it is concerning to me. I'm cautiously optimistic about Superman. Because Superman's one of those things where I am actually excited for because I'm like, it's not a character I care about, but it's a filmmaker that I do care
Mm-hmm.
about. And that's why I'm like, I want to see what James Gunn does to Superman because James Gunn makes me care about characters that I had no intention of caring about.
I
And I
think he
think
has
that's great.
consistently done that for sure.
Yeah.
For me,
He's
I
done
mean,
that in this too, but it's just to your point, like, yeah, the element and the detail, it's not there the same way it was in those other properties that you mentioned, like
yeah,
Peacemaker and Suicide Squad and all those kind of things. So and Guardians. So we will see. We will see for sure. I don't. Yeah, yeah, 7.
yeah. No, that's fair. Well, thank you very much for listening, everybody. You want to get in touch with us? We added something so that in the description of the show, you can actually text us your thoughts if you want. That would be great. But we're on TikTok, Threads, and Instagram at TDF Spoiled. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. You can go on YouTube at TDF Spoiled and watch or listen to the videos if you want. And if you want older episodes, please go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten and you'll find all the coordinates you need to find as well as be able to listen to older episodes. So, yeah, I guess I didn't say that we're also on all the podcast platforms where you can listen to all the episodes as well at your convenience. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.